Jeff Schlemmer. I'm a lawyer and I'm the executive director of the Community Legal Clinic of York Region. We're in the middle of a Canadian deep freeze right now. It's -10 and we've just gotten a couple feet of snow. And it reminds me that a lot of people wonder why anybody would choose to stay in a freezing tent when they could go into a warm shelter bed. And that's a fair question. So a lot of it has to do with things people assume about shelters that aren't necessarily the case. So shelters are staffed with terrific, generous people who do amazing work, but they are generally way underfunded, and so there are a lot of compromises. So for one thing, if you go to a shelter, normally you have to leave during the day. You can only stay there at night. So you're still outside, but without any shelter during the day. For another, most shelters can't accommodate you if you are a couple, for example. The men and the women would be separated. If you have a pet, a dog or a cat, you would have to get rid of them. They would have to be generally put down. If you have some belongings, if you've got some personal property, there's generally no place to keep it safe and secure. And again, during the day, you're expected to take all your stuff with you. That includes all your personal papers, photos, you name it, along with anything you have of value. Similarly, most shelters can't accommodate you if you have an addiction. You can't use while you're there. For many people who do suffer from addictions, that's just not practical. Similarly, there are people who are trying to beat addictions, who don't want to be around people who might tempt them into using. And there certainly is an element of predation in shelters. So there are all kinds of perfectly sensible reasons why people choose not to go into shelters, even though they may freeze to death in a tent. And the courts have recognized that and said that government is not allowed to evict people out of their tents unless they first offer them truly accessible accommodation. That is, accommodation that meets those needs that I've talked about. Now, fortunately, progressive cities across Ontario have discovered that the easiest way to check all those boxes is with tiny cabins, tiny cabin villages. So we now have 9 of these villages either operating or underway in Ontario. The cabins cost about $40,000 compared to $500,000 for a one-bedroom non-profit housing unit nowadays. And homeless people like them. They have a strong sense of community and mutual support. This is what the Ontario government needs to invest in. Municipalities, unfortunately, can't afford to build these things without substantial provincial help, and it is the province's responsibility to pay for housing homeless people. Hopefully that's going to happen. But in the meantime, when you see somebody out in a tent, don't assume that they're just perverse or crazy. They have some pretty good reasons why they're there and are suffering through our Canadian winter. Thanks.